Welcome to the inaugural episode of the On The Volley podcast with me, Ollie Spencer, and
me, Shaun Webley.
Lovely. We're thinking, as the first one, yesterday was the last round of fixtures in the Premier League, so we thought we'd do a bit of a roundup, talk about where teams finish and if they were, deserving of that spot or not, deserving champions, relegation, so forth. And also preview the upcoming European finals, both Champions League and Europa League, which I believe is happening in a couple of days' time, actually, quite soon.
Yeah, the Europa League finals on Wednesday and Champions League is Sunday.
Which is very exciting. And of course, Shaun is a United fan.
Yes, I am. So I'm a bit nervous for the Wednesday.
Well, you've got investment in the Europa League final.
Yeah. We've had
previous. Maybe to start with, and previous, of course. Maybe to start with we'll talk about yesterday's results and what that means. Obviously, before yesterday, there were already quite a few things set in place, especially towards the bottom of the table. And obviously, City Champions was been largely known for several months now.
I mean, there was a brief time where I thought maybe we could come back, but then they're just too good for us. We're not there yet.
Glimmer of hope. But when they dropped points the other week, you thought, hang on a minute, is the impossible possible?
I think they dropped. I think they lost the home to Leeds, and I thought, all right, maybe. And then there's another result which I can't remember, but yeah, I thought maybe there was a chance, but realistically, the gap was too big.
Yeah, I think so. I think they were always. I think that sort of around sort of February time, they were. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I should mention before we actually get into it that it was my idea to start the podcast, just for people that are wondering, because I've sort of just asked Ollie on and just chucked up a spotlight on him. Just thought, there you go. So
I'm really glad to be doing this. So also, just for listeners, of which I hope there are many.
Yeah, we go.
The idea is it will be Shaun and I on a regular basis. We haven't quite decided how often these will be, but it'd be great if it was every week or maybe every fortnight. And then we'll hopefully try and get some guests on in the future from various clubs and maybe some professional in different industries.
Well, yeah, definitely.
And make it quite exciting. But for the time being, like I said, we'll give a rundown. So obviously, City champions, worthy champions, I think.
Oh yeah, by a mile. I mean, they were just on another level. I mean, they had a bit of a poor start to the season. Obviously, losing to Tottenham is sort of the game that sticks out to me. But then since then, they've sort of turned a corner and have just been unstoppable.
Yeah, it's weird actually looking back with the benefit of hindsight. In those early months of the season, like you say, they weren't in the picture at all.
No,
they had a slow start. They had a slow start to the season, but the whole time they had a few games in hand, which I think people didn't really take into account. But I remember around that sort of November period when Spurs and Everton were flying and Liverpool were doing well as well, actually. City weren't anywhere near it. And I think lots of pundits have already sort of written them off, which is always a naive move. And then, they won their games in hand and suddenly, it felt like over a few weeks, Spurs dropped down to seventh or something after a few bad games, and City were right up there suddenly. And I think this season has been like that. It's sort of so many things changing so quickly. It's been a crazy season. Maybe that's partly down to a lack of fitness with players not having much for pre-season. But it's been a really wild season. And I think in the end, the table sort of is a fair reflection on the whole. Yeah. But it's been a really strange season, and it could have gone a lot of other ways, I think.
Yeah, and I think because obviously COVID's had a big impact, and I feel like that some teams have benefited from that. I think my team, Man United, has somehow, slightly benefited from COVID itself. Obviously, because of the fixture schedule has been a bit of a struggle, but I feel like we have benefited from that. But City definitely benefited. I mean, they were just unstoppable.
Brilliant. And again, some more brilliant recruitment in the summer. I mean, they seem to get it right. I can't really. Obviously, they spend big, and we all know that, and it's a big talking point. But you have to give it to them. I can't think of one big money signing that's gone badly, really, in recent years.
I mean, I don't know whether you count it as big money, but Nathan Ake was brought in from Bournemouth, and I can't remember many appearances he's made, but it's still a backup. But
it's a good shout. Yeah, I suppose backup. But I remember that at the time, it's about 40 million or something, wasn't it? 45 million.
Yeah, and I thought that was a bit of a gamble, considering they also spent 60, 70 million on Ruben Diaz, who obviously turned out to be a arguably the best signing of the season, but still a bit of a risk.
Personally, I think. Well, let's talk about Ruben Diaz. He's been transformative. I think he's been there. Van Dijk, hasn't he? He's another one that sort of just slipped out of Spurs' grasp last summer. He was linked.
I can sense the frustration from here.
I'm not crying, I promise. And I think Mourinho said he was the number one target, and then it was Skriniar, and then eventually ended up with Joe Rodon, which is the real fall from grace there. Without sending a Welshman here in front of me.
Yeah. Careful what you say.
Yeah, as you know, City got him, and again in hindsight, 60 million, 65 million. It's a bit of a bargain, I suppose, for what he's done to the defence.
Yeah, I think it also highlights obviously City's recruitment is just brilliant, but also highlights how poor other teams' recruitments are. Because you mentioned that Spurs were interested in Diaz, United were as well, and it's like how these teams didn't, scout properly and think, okay, maybe he might be worth a punt. I mean, City took a punt on him and they've won the league comfortably. So
and again, I sort of compared him to Van Dijk there in terms of being, that the defender to transform the team. And I think what Van Dijk did so well was his sort of his confidence he emitted and just his control and leadership. I think that's very similar with Diaz, and you see the likes of Stones having a real revival in form. People sort of wrote him off. Actually, he was another one who's linked to Spurs in the summer.
Yeah,
25 million or something. People sort of written him off, and Diaz has really taken his game to the next level, which I think was similar with Gomez and co when Van Dijk came to Liverpool.
Do you think that Stones' revival has been like as a result of Diaz's good performances, or do you think it's something else?
I think it's a mixture of things. I think confidence plays a big part in everything in football, and I think for Pep to show confidence in Stones, that's what he wants as a player. You need your manager to have faith in you in order to perform well. And I think it's also consistency as well, regular game time, which is something he never really had. He was sort of always in and out of the team, which is, you're always going to struggle to find form with that when that's the case. So I think regular game time has benefited him massively. But I do believe Diaz, like I say, the confidence he gives off, his calmness on the ball and in situations, I think has really helped out Stones, and they've become a fantastic partnership. And also, I think it's meant that Stones is now a nailed-on position in the England team, if not definitely on the plane. But I think it's pretty much in everyone's starting 11 as well, which definitely wouldn't have been the case.
No,
to go, which is the
and obviously having a brilliant defense sort of helps with the amazing attack that Man City have. I mean, it's just the attack is unbelievable. I mean, Phil Foden's arguably he should be on the plane as well. He should be starting for England, really. But what do you make of Phil Foden this season?
I think Phil Foden's he's just been magical, isn't he? Maybe I think it's difficult to get a real sense of how he is when he's surrounded by so much quality, but he hasn't looked out of place, and I think that's the main thing. I think previous seasons, this isn't his breakout season. So the 2 seasons now 2 or 3 seasons he's been in and around the first team, starting now and again, and he sort of always feel like, he's always been exciting, but maybe never quite at the level where he deserves to be starting every week. But now, this season, he's become undroppable, which I think has been the main thing. There'd be uproar if he wasn't starting, and he's displacing unbelievable talents like Sterling and Bernardo Silva every week. They can't get a sniff because of Foden's incredible form, and I think he's performed in the big games as well, which is always a huge thing. That was something Rooney was so good at, and all the best players are so good at. He stepped up when it mattered, stepped up against Liverpool. I think of those was it 2 goals or 1 goal? Goal and assist maybe?
Goal and assist, I think.
Really well taken goal as well. And then also again in the Champions League, he stepped up, and he's now like I say, undroppable and a huge player in the team. And I think he's a really exciting for City fans, but also for England fans. He could be the next big hope for England, and one of many in this current team. But his emergence has been phenomenal this season, yeah.
And I think also it kind of highlights just the patience that City had with him, because I think there was talk about 12 to 18 months ago about that he was potentially thinking of leaving because obviously he wasn't getting the game time that he wanted. He was in and out of the team. But I think it just goes to show, maybe for some other players that have left, for pastures new, naming no names, Jadon Sancho, who have left. Maybe it's just like, you've got to be patient with Guardiola, because obviously, Guardiola rates him highly. I think he's compared him to Messi, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So,
and I can see the comparisons. I mean, that's a hell of
really,
but it's a hell of a comparison. But he's not at that level, of course. And Messi was, a different level at that age. But he is, I think stylistically as well. There are similarities there, and if you can get anywhere close, I mean, that's then unbelievable for English football. I agree with that for sure. So City have obviously been extraordinary and deserved the winners. Let's talk about the rest of the top four, because obviously that was a dramatic day.
Yeah, probably the only drama on the last day, I think.
Pretty much, yeah, and obviously the all-important fight for the European.
Yeah. So obviously Leicester have missed out yet again for the second season in a row. Chelsea and Liverpool are in it. Man United are in it, obviously.
But Man United was safe for a few weeks, weren't they?
Yeah, we've had top four for a while. I mean, I think we've had it secured for about a month now. I think it's just about getting getting to the final without any injuries, which obviously we failed to do, but still we seem to be in one piece. And
like you say, Liverpool and Chelsea were the two that were sort of battling up until the last minute, along with Leicester. In the end, 3 points separated Liverpool and Leicester, but it didn't feel that way. It felt really tight. And actually, I think, you'll say it through gritted teeth, being a Man United fan, but Liverpool deserve a lot of credit. Again, they were down and out, very similar to Spurs in their season in many ways. Obviously, hugely impacted by injuries, but in the end, I think they've done really well to come back. It's not easy to pick yourself up when you're sort of struggling to win a game at home, and you've got the media against you. Everyone probably feels like the world's against you, and there's things off the pitch that are impacting them as well. It's been a tough season for them, but I think they've done remarkably to get to finish in third, and I think it's a huge credit to Klopp, actually, because again, he was one that people were saying, is he finished in English football? I think at some point, which is ludicrous, but I think so. Huge credit to him. Huge credit to players like Salah, who just was relentless. One just missed out with the golden boot by one goal. Even when the rest of the team was struggling, he still manages to score on an extraordinarily regular basis. And actually, credit to the players like Nat Phillips. He was a name that I hadn't heard of this time last year.
No, I hadn't either.
I'm sure some Liverpool fans wouldn't have heard of him. And I think he's another one, like Stones. He just needed a bit of consistency. When he first came in, people weren't too sure, but I think by the end of it, he's been brilliant for them. He's a big part of why they've ended up there in the end. Trusting him rather than switching it. I think when Klopp was sort of rolling the dice and playing Fabinho centre back, which I think worked, and Henderson centre back, he thought they weren't awful there, but it meant the midfield was massively impacted. And I think actually trusting, just putting your faith in the youth in your academy, with Reece Williams and like I say, Nat Phillips especially, I think has paid dividends, and I think they deserve to finish Champions League.
Yeah, and I think obviously you saw the celebrations after the last minute goal against West Brom for Alisson, which was just crazy. But I think you could see how much it meant to them, because obviously they won the league comfortably last season, but I think to come back from where they were, because they had a string of losses at home. I think it was like six home losses in a row or something.
After like 3.5 years without losing at home,
it's crazy. And I think they do deserve credit, as much as it pains me to say it. They do deserve a lot of credit. I mean, they came to Old Trafford depleted, and they took us apart. I mean, they were brilliant. But I mean, I think next season they need to, well, depending on who stays and who goes, but I think next season they need to be, top two, really, challenging for the title, because I don't think they can accept anything less.
I think next season could be an interesting one, because I think City will stay as they are, if not improve with certain transfers happen. And, I think United will build as well, and Liverpool and Chelsea. I think Chelsea are one to look out for again. So I think next season the title fight there could be really interesting. I think all four of those teams have finished in the top four this season. Will all be improving, all be looking to build and push for the title.
Do you think, like, obviously taking away your supporting of Spurs, but do you think that the top four could potentially be decided already? and we haven't even started next season because of the quality of the teams that are going to be fighting for the top four?
It's a great question, actually. What you're saying, do you think this same four will finish already sort of nailed on?
Yeah, nailed on.
Um,
Because I just can't see Arsenal building. I can't see Spurs building. I mean, unless obviously a certain player leaves, then maybe.
I think. Well, that's not going to help things, you know.
Well, they'd have money to spend. I mean, I don't know whether they spend it well.
It's all to do with recruitment. Then I don't know. I think it's a really good question, actually, and I think the likes of Spurs and Arsenal, I think they're both a long way off. They're a long way off those four you mentioned. Leicester obviously are close. We know they're close. You know, if Spurs didn't score 2 in the last 5 minutes against them on the last day, they would have finished. They would have finished top 4, I think. Actually, maybe not. If they won, if they won, they would have finished top 4. Yeah. So you know, really fine margins. So they're definitely not far away, and they're already bringing in the likes of Samari from Lille, French champions Lille, who've had a great season. He's had a great season personally as well. I'm sure they'll be bringing a striker in, perhaps Odsonne Edouard from Celtic or Ivan Toney. All the options I've seen have been very encouraging. So Leicester are going to build. I think they're the only ones really that will be knocking the door. But I do think that Spurs, Arsenal, West Ham obviously had a good season this season. I think it's impossible to say how they're going to do next season.
Yeah, I think they might just tail off slightly. I don't think they're going to get relegated or anything, but I think they'll just find their level, which is mid-table, 9th or 10th. Or
somewhere in between. I think I probably agree with that. I think it's been an exceptional season from them.
Exceptional
in the true sense of the word. I agree with that. I think West Ham might finish around 11th or 10th, 11th next season.
I don't think that's not. I don't think that's bad for West Ham personally, considering the sides that are ahead of them. You know, I think that's pretty good going.
Pretty good going. I think also a lot of that hinges on whether or not they lose Rice and who they get in at this summer. You know, if that did happen, I don't know. But I think you're right. I think those four could already be nailed on, which is a sort of scary thought. And then it's just dependent on the order, really.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Leicester for a minute then, because they've obviously just missed out. How do you assess them as a club, and also assess Roger as a manager? You know, are they unfortunate? Do they deserve to finish 5th? Do they need to look at themselves? You know, where are they going wrong? And is Roger bottling it? Well, you know, what's happened there?
As much as I want to say, Rodgers has bottled it again, being because he was a former Liverpool manager, I just can't say that. I think he's a brilliant manager, but I just don't think they're at that quality yet. Like, they just always seem to miss out. It was the same last season. It came down to the last game and they missed out again. And I just think, I don't know, maybe it's just a players thing, that it might just be a mentality issue. I think the squad is more than good enough. Like, player for player, I'd say they're definitely in the top 4 in terms of the quality of the squad that they've got. It's just, I don't know, it just seems something's missing. Well, what do you think?
I think on paper their squad is weaker than the likes of those above, those 4 above them, especially with City. I think significantly weaker. But I think Rodgers is a really good manager. I think he's getting the best out of those players. You know, you wouldn't, especially a few years ago, you wouldn't think that Evans, for example.
No, I can't give you that one.
No, what I'm saying is he's a great defender now. I think a lot of it down to Rodgers. I think he's a fantastic manager, and he's made the squad feel really good. I think a lot of them are really good, and I think they're in this position. You know, they should be close, really, but their recruitment has been superb, and I think Rodgers is a really, really good manager, and he's just getting the best out of the squad. And I think there probably are just a couple of, again, this season, really unlucky with injuries. Obviously, they lost Barnes a month or 2 ago.
Yeah. Wasn't Vardy injured? Am I right?
As well. I think he might have been.
Madison as well.
Madison and Pereira, who I think is the best right back in the league, was last season.
James Justin as well.
James Justin.
I thought he was brilliant this season.
They had some really big injuries. So they have been unfortunate in that regard. But I think Rodgers is a great manager, and I think they're probably a few signings away from being on par with the likes of Chelsea and United and etc. But also, I think squad depth is a big thing. You know, I think outside of their 11,
Yeah.
They need improving, especially when you compare it with the likes of City's bench, especially, and Chelsea's. Yeah. It's just that's the main difference for me. I think it's squad depth, and I think that needs improving. But I think they're going in the right direction for sure. They're a really exciting club. I'd love to be a Leicester fan. I really would. And I think this season has still been hugely successful.
Oh yeah, definitely with the FA Cup win.
Definitely. FA Cup win, their first in their history, and I think 5th place is a great finish for them. I think it's difficult because they'll be disappointed knowing that 24 hours ago, or 40 hours ago, they had the chance to finish top 4. But I think at the start of the season, if you said you'd finish above Spurs and Arsenal and Everton and whoever else, I think you'd take that as a Leicester fan, wouldn't you? I think it's been a good season. It's just last day disappointment once again, like you say.
I think there might be this what if thing, because I think I read somewhere that they're one of the sides, along with Man United and Man City, who have spent the longest in the top 4 this season. So I think it's just about the disappointment of just missing out again, so similarly to last season. I think it'll just. Yeah. But still, as you say, they have had a really good season. I just think 1 or 2 players, and I think they'll be up there definitely.
I agree with that. I think we'll move down the table slightly to 7th and 8th. Spurs and Arsenal. I was worried on the last day that they were going to, after a horrendous season from them, that they were actually going to finish above us. And I thought, I'm unbelievable.
I'll let you take the floor on Tottenham. I'll ask you the question. So, what's gone wrong this season? If you had to sum it up, what's gone wrong?
This season has been horrible. It really has been horrible. And I'm sure Arsenal fans feel the same way. I think we've been in similar boats this season. Obviously, Spurs had a managerial change. I think it was the right thing to do. The club was going in a bad direction under Mourinho. It was negative. The football was negative. The atmosphere was negative. I respect him as a manager hugely, and actually as a person as well. I think when he's not managing my club, I like him. And when I think other people have said this, but when you're winning under Mourinho, it feels amazing. But when you're losing, it turns sour so quickly, and it's not all on him at all by any means, because I mentioned earlier about the recruitment at Spurs, and if we did get Skriniar or Diaz, if Spurs just pushed the boat out, spend extra bit of money, I think it could be a different story. Those two were Mourinho's targets, and in the end, you end up with Rodon, who actually I think probably been Spurs' best defender this season. There's been so many individual mistakes, so many frustrating moments when you just concede in the last 5 minutes and you drop a point or drop 2 points or sometimes 3 points. It's been really frustrating from that point of view. There's been so many instances like that, and I think that a lot of that is down to Mourinho's tactics. In that, after 1 goal goes in, you sort of sit back and you invite on the pressure. And I think that's been a big issue under Mason. As inexperienced as he is, he understands that sort of club's ethos is the club's built success on attacking football, and I think Mason understands that. And he's in his first game against Southampton, we were losing for the majority of the game, and then turned it around fairly late on, and then you keep attacking, and even after we got the second one, like the 88th minute or 90th minute, something really late on, we kept attacking, which could have backfired, sure, but it very nearly led to then a 3rd goal. And I think that's the difference. You keep attacking, you don't invite the pressure on, and you never know. The game opens up, and you might get a 3rd goal or 4th goal, whatever it might be. And so I think that was a big down for Mourinho. It worked in some instances. I don't really know what happened actually. Sorry if I'm waffling on a bit. But,
no, it's fine. Carry on.
In November, obviously October, November, Spurs were flying, got a couple of great results, notably against United 6-1.
Moving swiftly on.
By a red card early on, for sure, but I still think that Spurs probably would have won either way. I think
definitely.
And that looked like a really well-coached side with good pressing in the final third. And for a while, the defence looked really, really solid. We had those. You think you mentioned it earlier. Had those 3 games: City at home, Chelsea away, and Arsenal at home, and we didn't concede a single goal in those 3 games, and got 7 points out of those games. And I don't really know what changed. I think Reguilon was great at the start. He got injured, and when he came back from injury, he wasn't. He was half the player he was before, and he's finished the season that way. He's had a poor end to the season. I still think he's going to be a good player, a great player. And actually, I don't mind too much because it might mean that Madrid don't come back in and get his back clause. So it sort of could work in our favour a bit. But he's had a poor end to the season. But he was flying at the start. I think a big part as well was just finding a settled centre-back partnership. He was always chopping and changing, and I just don't think that helps things. Mason's got a lot of faults, but one thing he has done is, up until yesterday actually, was he played Dyer and Alderweireld consistently as a partnership, and I just think that consistency makes a huge difference. I don't really know where it went wrong in terms of defensively, because for a period we were so watertight, and you had the whole team, you had the wingers tracking back. Bergwijn, people sort of jokes that Bergwijn was playing left wing back, but that he made the effort and it did the job, doubling up on the wingers, and it was it was a real team effort. And I don't really know what happened, but suddenly the defence were leaking goals, so many individual errors, and then it all went downhill from there. And if it wasn't for the incredible form and consistency of Harry Kane and Son and Højbjerg, I think those three, and also Lloris I think actually had a very good season under the radar. If it wasn't for those three or four, Spurs could be looking at a bottom half finish for sure, because the rest of the teams didn't do enough. They didn't step up, and it's like I say, so many individual mistakes, some of which Mourinho can do nothing about. But I think a lot of it was down to his negative approach tactically, and I think sacking him was the right decision for sure. But the timing is obviously questionable with the cup final. I sort of get it. I'd imagine that Levy was sort of hoping for a bit of a bounce, just in time for the cup final. Familiar face comes in, maybe they'll want to perform, and I think they did try to perform. I think City were just too good on the day. Just couldn't get near them. And Mason's won. I think he's won. I think he's lost two. What is it? 2 of the last 6, maybe. I think City's coming.
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that. So not too bad. 3, including the cup final. But got a great result. Got a great result yesterday against Leicester, and actually I think were better than them on the day, certainly second half. And good result against Wolves. Against fantastic performance at home against Sheffield United, albeit relegated Sheffield United. So that he's been a positive, and it's been nice just to see someone who's adored by the fans like he is come in and do well, or do relatively well. Just to have someone that's likable, fan favourite, an ex-player in the dugout, someone that understands the fans, understands the club, is a fan of the club, has been at the club since like 6, something like that. It's crazy, really. I think it's been really, really refreshing, and it's been it's been something. Even if the results haven't been there where perhaps they should be, it's been nice just to have that sort of something positive at the end of the season. What's been a largely very negative season.
Yeah, and I think this is a difficult one, because obviously I've experienced Mourinho for 3 years, so I think I do get what you're saying, because I completely agree with about the negativity. I think it just wanes on you, honestly. I mean, I just remember some of the Spurs results. Like, I think they lost 1-0 to Brighton, and then it might have been another loss straight after, and they just looked abysmal. And I think Mourinho kept coming out and kept blaming the players, and it does get, I assume from the players' perspective, it does get, it does weigh on you a lot when your manager's just constantly coming out and slating you every game, pretty much.
It's going to fester into you as well, isn't it? It's going to affect the confidence of the players, which then affects the performances.
Yeah, and it's not going to make you perform the best of your abilities if you know that one mistake is going to make you, be the target of Mourinho's anger. And so I think the appointment of Ryan Mason was probably the best that Spurs could have made, to be honest, because it's very similar to United. We got Mourinho, we got rid of him, and then we brought in Solskjaer, who understands the club.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, I don't know whether it'll go the same way as Solskjaer. I don't think he's even going to be offered the job, but
no, he won't.
I think it's a good platform to be at, and I think they did make the right decision with Mason. It's just, I don't know whether he will be staying for the long term.
Mason, I think, is almost definitely won't be manager next season, but I'd love him to be part of the coaching staff. I'd love him to stay at the club. maybe managing a youth team or part of the first team coaching stuff. I think it'd be really good for him. He seems like a great guy. He's got the best interests at heart, which I think is the main thing.
And
sorry, just to say quickly, I mean, you wouldn't have got this because Man United are obviously historically the biggest club in England, but one thing I really noticed with Mourinho, which is sort of weird, I didn't really think about beforehand, was the media attention that he brings into the club. And, Spurs nowhere near the same size as United, so I wasn't really used to that. Obviously, you get a bit of attention because certainly a few years ago were one of the best teams in the country, and obviously got a couple of really world-class players. But he never really had the same amount of media attention as other clubs, which I was fine with. And then when Mourinho comes in, it just sort of feels like all the articles, all the punditry, everything's just centered around him and the club. A lot of it negative.
He's just an enigma, really. I mean, whether it's bad or good, he's just so the media just love him or hate him. They just focus on him.
Yeah, but there was so much coverage of Spurs, and it's honestly draining. But it was something I didn't really think about beforehand. But he just, like you say, he's that huge personality in football, and no matter how well he's doing on the pitch, he attracts attention either way. It's something you can't really avoid, and that was odd. That was really odd. But yeah, enough about Spurs. And I think just quickly with the I think it's officially called the UEFA Europa Conference League.
Oh yeah, have you seen some of the teams that are in it? It's not the most glamorous competition.
Finland and Moldova and stuff like that. I think I get the idea of it. I think the concept's quite nice of offering teams that wouldn't otherwise get European matches played. I think that's quite nice. And also, I'm not against it. With Spurs being in it, it's sort of embarrassing, but I don't think it's too bad. I think it's better than nothing, and also it meant finish above Arsenal, which is always sweet. I think it's a good opportunity for Spurs to play young players. I don't know how seriously the club will take it. I think we'll very quickly find out next season whether or not they want to be in it. If they don't,
what do you get if you win it?
If you win it, you get a nice shiny trophy, which Spurs won't say no to, can't say no to. And you get automatic qualification into Europa League, which is
brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. For those clubs that will be nowhere near us, that's a fantastic thing for them. But for Spurs, you'd hope that next season there will be Europa League at least anyway.
Yeah, and the teams, like, I know, is it Spurs? Who's going into the Conference League? Is it just Spurs, or is it?
It's just seventh place, yeah.
So I think I've seen some of the teams that are in it, and I think, I'm not trying to jinx it, but if Spurs don't get to at least the final in that, I mean, some of the teams in it are just not very good.
But that's what I'm saying. If Spurs want to win it, they have no excuse not to win it, because I think the other best teams would be Roma, I think, maybe, and maybe Villarreal.
Yeah.
Unless they win Europa League, in which case I think it goes to Celta Vigo, I think. But there's not many. I think Molde, Norway. There's not many big clubs in there. So if Spurs want to win it, they haven't really got an excuse not to win it. But it's just whether they want to or not. I think next season we'll find out if they want to have those sort of a bit of a drag having those midweek games or not. We'll see. It's an interesting one, but I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to it. Let's talk about a couple of the mid-table teams. I'd like to talk about Leeds. Obviously got promoted and finished 9th in the end. Level on points with Everton, better goal difference. How do you assess their season?
Well,
without any bias.
No, to be like, obviously I know I'm a United fan. I'm supposed to hate Leeds, but I just think it's just really difficult to hate them because I'm just a big fan of Bielsa as a manager. Obviously, I'm not a fan of the club Leeds, but anyway, I think they came into the Premier League. They were very expansive. Like, I remember the first game against Liverpool where they lost 4-3, which was probably one of the games of the season. And they were brilliant in that, but they were just very attack minded. And then it was a similar situation against Man City at home. It was a 1-1 draw, but still, it was a brilliant game. But then they sort of came unstuck because they did that against Spurs, and I think Spurs beat them 3-0. Yeah. They did that against Man United, and we beat them 6-2. I think they did it against Chelsea and lost. So I think I think they have learned because they definitely have learned their lesson because they did so well against Man City. They played well against Man United as well. I think they have learned. I think next season will be, it's the second season syndrome. It's very similar to how Sheffield United, not in terms of, play style or anything, but in terms of where they finished. It's all about next season. They need to really consolidate Premier League football.
Do you
I think that'll be the main
reckon
target.
do you think they'll maintain a top half finish, or do you think they'll slip down and really be struggling?
I don't know. I think it depends on. Obviously, it depends on transfers, of course, but I just think they're so well drilled. I just can't see them getting relegated. I can't see them there. But I feel like 10th or 11th. I think that'll be their position.
Yeah.
What do you think of them?
I love Leeds. I think they're a really exciting team to watch. Again, like you said, I love Bielsa. He's a really endearing character. Has a real mystique about him, which I love. I think they've got some fantastic players. I think players like Rafinha is quality. Whether or not he'll lead us somewhere or not, I don't know. Like you say, I think that could have quite a big part in how they do next season. Certain players leaving. Phillips, I'd imagine, would stay because he's a local lad. Bamford probably as well. I don't really know where Bamford would go if he was to leave. Players like Rafinha could easily be like a Salah replacement Liverpool, for example. You wouldn't be out of place there. But yeah, I think they're a really, really fun team. And actually, you mentioned a couple of results there, but I think they've beaten every single top six team. They've got a fantastic result against the top six teams.
Yeah, I think apart from Man United, I think they've beaten
Spurs a couple of weeks ago. Totally outplayed them. Apart from Arsenal.
No, Man United. I think we drew 0-0, and United beat them 6-2.
But, they even 0-0, they've still got a good result against.
Oh yeah, they should have won the game.
I think if anything, their record against the teams lower down the table needs to be improved on.
Definitely.
Just sort of lapse of concentration, and maybe the sort of boisterous, expansive style does need to be slightly addressed, just to so they're not leaking so much. But maybe that's just a bit of a stereotype. But I think they're a fantastic addition to the Premier League.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'd like you say, I'd agree with you. I don't. They won't be close to relegation next season. I think they'll probably be around where they are this season, mid-table. On the other end of the spectrum, Southampton have had a really weird season, and I feel for them. Again, at the start of the season, they were right up there. People thought they might finish in a European spot, and they've got the worst record since New Year's Day. I think they've won like 3 games since then.
Yeah, they've been really poor.
They've been way off it, and I don't really know what's happened. How do you assess that one?
Southampton have brilliant players. Like, I rate James Ward-Prowse. Not many people do for some reason, but I do. Obviously, I rate Danny Ings. Yannick Vestergaard, I rate him as well. It's really hard one to explain because I thought they would have finished a lot better than they did. I thought maybe top 10. And after the start to the season, I thought, okay, they're going to do well this season. But I can't explain what's happened. They've sort of just gone off a cliff, really, it seems. What do you think?
I agree with you with everything you just said. I love Ward-Prowse. He's the only, I'm not sure you've seen the stats, the only outfield player to play every minute of the last 2 seasons, or something like that. Maybe only midfielder, which is extraordinary. I think he's fantastic. Actually, I'd take him into the Euros, by the way. Ings as well. I reckon Ings might lead to summer. I think he might just go, especially if Kane leaves Spurs. I could see him coming in on the cheap. Even if Kane doesn't leave as a backup, Ings would be amazing. I think a couple players might lead to summer. I don't really know why it is either. Maybe they're just a bit sort of worn out. I think Hassan Huntl plays a sort of really high intensity game. Obviously, earned his badges up at Red Bull, and Red Bull are known for their intense pressing sort of philosophy, actually. And so maybe the players just got a bit tired, just fallen off it a bit. What is it now? I'm under him. Is it sort of 2.5 years, something like that?
Yeah, and I think similarly to Bielsa, I think we could see the same because I feel like that's been what's the word? Something that's been used against Bielsa that after a certain amount of years, the players just either get not sick of it, but they just get so tired because they're put under so much pressure and strain. Really? Maybe the same is happening at Southampton.
Yeah, it's difficult to explain, but I hope the next season they pick up because they were, if their second half of the season form was the same as their first, they would have got relegated several weeks ago, I think, and that is a slightly worrying prospect. a possibility next season maybe if certain players leave and I don't know. I think probably I think they probably keep Hasenhüttl in charge. I think I certainly would. I think he's a really good manager, but something needs to be addressed. It's a weird one. It just completely fell off the cliff. And then as for the bottom three teams, unless there's anyone else in the table you'd like to speak about.
No, it's okay.
Everton and Wolves sort of had seasons as we maybe expect. Wolves slightly disappointing.
Yes, Wolves slightly, but I feel like Everton were kind of just where I'd expect them to finish, really.
Yeah. Again, Everton were knocking on the door on the last day. They could have easily got Europa League.
Definitely.
In the end, finished 10th. The bottom three then: Fulham, West Brom, and Sheffield United. Not surprising. I think at the start of the season, if someone gave you those three names, you'd be inclined to agree. I'm not sure people saw this drop off from Sheffield United quite as drastically as this, given how good they were last season, to finish from 23 points and like rock bottom for a long time. That was concerning, and it was a real shame because I think last season everyone sort of second team, really, weren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
What went wrong there?
I mean, I think it was so difficult to repeat what they did last season because the beginning of last season, nobody expected them to finish as high as they did, and nobody expected them to be, as competent at this level as they were. I just think, I don't know, it's that second season syndrome that I'm going to keep referring to. I just feel like it's so crucial that you have to maintain your levels. You can't drop off a single % in this league because it's just lethal, really. I mean, if you just drop off a single %, then you're down there, you're relegated. And I think also, obviously, Chris Wilder being sacked didn't help their situation. Losing. Sorry?
Rightfully sacked?
Oh, yeah. I'd say rightfully because of where they were, but I just feel like he's such a good manager. Yeah. I mean, there's rumours that he's going to be going to West Brom as their replacement for Allardyce, so I feel like he could get them back up next season. And then.
Yeah, I think he's a big loss, isn't he? Because obviously it's such a big part of the football club and the local community as well. And it just makes you realise, I think, when they're in this vein of form this season, I think it makes you realise how much they were overachieving last season. You look at their squad, and it's a really poor squad. And I think Wilder if anything, it just highlights what a good job Wilder did last season. You mentioned West Brom there. I think they had a decent squad. I think they had a few really stand-up players, like Mateus Pereira. I thought is fantastic, really exciting.
And I think Grady Diangana as well. I thought he was going to be brilliant in the Premier League, but
yeah,
I don't know what's happened to him, to be honest. But
and so I think Johnson had a really good season.
Yeah,
26. They've got a few good players, but ultimately just not enough. Even Allardyce couldn't do it.
I thought there was a brief time where I thought they were going to do it because they had that win against Chelsea away and then they beat Southampton comfortably at home, and I thought they're going to do this, something they're going to pull it off. But I don't know. There are, as you say, there are some players that are Premier League quality, but I just feel like they just didn't have the quality needed to stay up in this division.
Yeah,
about.
I think it's a bit of a sort of rebuild job there actually, because I reckon they'll lose those players I mentioned this summer, or So I think it'd be interesting to see how they rebuild in the Championship. Fulham's an interesting one though, because I think Fulham are very different to the likes of West Brom and Sheffield United in the way, in almost every aspect. They got a much younger squad, really exciting squad. I think quite an exciting manager in Scott Parker, who maybe just got a bit found out this season. It's an interesting one. I thought they might do better than they did.
I mean, I watched the Man United Fulham game. I thought they were brilliant. The second half in particular, I thought they were really good. There've been some results this season, like they drew away at Spurs, I think a couple months back, and I watched them that game, and I thought they were really good. Yeah, I am surprised to see them where they are, because I do rate Parker highly as a manager. I think he could take a job like a Spurs. No, maybe not yet. Maybe if Potter goes to Spurs, then I could see him going to a Brighton or something like that. Yeah. But I do think he's a good manager. I just think, again, it's just about the quality of the squad, because as you said, the squad is so young. It's just there might not be enough experience.
I'm saying how exciting it is. How but maybe the inexperience at the end cost them.
Yeah. Exactly.
They played some great football, and I think there's a few sort of results went against them, and that was enough. Their goal difference is nearly twice as good as West Brom and Sheffield United below them. So I think with Fulham it's really fine margins, and I think now again it'd be interesting to see who they lose this summer. Obviously had a couple of good loan players like Anderson and Josh Madger came in as well on loan, who didn't quite hit the ground running how Fulham fans would have hoped. But I think this summer could be interesting for them. See who they lose, who they keep hold of. I hope Parker stays actually at Fulham. I'd like him to. I think he deserves another go, like similar to Daniel Farker at Norwich. Came up, exciting team, didn't happen, go back down, few additions,
build again, and then come back up again.
To grow, to learn. 2 years older, and then come back up with the same manager, and you never know. I think Norwich might have quite a good season next season. I think Fulham are in quite a similar position to them. So that'd be interesting. And I hope they don't lose too many players this summer. That said, I hope Anderson comes to Spurs.
I do rate Anderson highly, though. Can I just say before we move on? I think he's definitely a Premier League quality. I could see him being at Spurs or an Arsenal or an Everton or something like that. Yeah. I think he does. He will get that move.
I agree with that. Also, he was captain as well, and I think he's shown. Oh yeah, I think he's shown enough quality to get that move, and I think Spurs is likely, from the reports I've read, about 20 million seems like
that's a bargain.
Nailed on. That feels like a good price to me. I'm very happy with that signing. So I think that's the Premier League covered, really.
Can I ask for your player of the year? Who do you think is the player of the year?
It's a good shout. Without being biased, and I'll be accused of being biased, but I really do think, objectively, Harry Kane has been the best individual player this season. I just don't see how any other argument can be made. He finished with 23 goals, top goal scorer, 14 assists, best playmaker, most assists. So he's won both awards there. He won 3 Player of the Season awards at Spurs. I'd probably on par with his 16-17 season, his best in a Spurs shirt. So he's just so complete. He's everything for Spurs. Even defensive action has been unbelievable, from corners, clears so many things off the line, and tracks back, drops deep, picks out Son over and over again, and is clinical as always. And I just think he's been unbelievable. And actually, if anything, Spurs' overall performance this season and how poor they've been, I think if anything, that adds to the argument of Kane winning the Player of the Year, because he's still managed to be top scorer and top assister despite the rest of the team being so poor. I think people were saying, obviously Diaz is a big argument, and he might well be your choice when we come on to that. People are saying that he should get it because he's part of the winning team. But if any, this is individual player, and if anything, it's made Kane's numbers even more impressive given the context of how bad Spurs have been. So I think for me, it's Kane, hands down. What about you?
There's 2 for me, and I promise this is not bias, okay? So it's either Harry Kane or Bruno Fernandes. I just feel it's one or the other. I'm going to go with Kane because I just feel like, objectively, he has been the best player in the league this season. I mean, I want to go with Bruno, but, Kane is on another level. I mean, some of his performances this season, that in the 6-1 loss, he was out of this world to me anyway. And I just think whether he stays at Spurs or whether he goes, I think he's going to go down as arguably a Premier League legend to me anyway.
I think if he does go with likely set in the league anyway, so he'll only enhance that, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
he's already a Spurs legend though, for sure. Actually, you mentioned the United game there, which again he was fantastic in. I think his best performance this season, weirdly, was at home to Man City when he didn't score at all. Yeah. He just ran the game. It's unbelievable. He just shrugged off defenders. They couldn't get near him. He was exceptional at the game. He's had so many games like that where he's just a level above. So you say Fernandes, and I thought you might say Fernandes, and there's definitely an argument there, being, what was he, 4 goals off being top goal scorer and Kane as most assists. What's the argument there for you?
Well, I just think from where United were, because the middle of last season, United were low down in the table. I think we were mid-table. And I think what he's done for Man United, to propel them to nearly a title challenge, because nobody expected a title challenge from us. Well, I certainly didn't. I just think what he's done, his performances in big games has improved from last season. I think the City away game, he was really good. The Spurs away game, I thought he was good. It's more in the European competitions, really. Against Roma, he was brilliant, but obviously this is the Premier League. But I just feel with his contribution to the team with goals and assists, I just think he'd be up. I'd say he'd be second for me, with Kane at number 1.
And Diaz third? Are those the three for you?
I don't know about Diaz because I don't want to be a hypocrite and say no, but then there's also a part of me that's like, he's come in to a defence that's already worth 250 million. And it's just like, obviously I think he's an absolutely brilliant defender. I think he's been the best defender in the league this season. It's just, would I put him top three? I'm going to say yes. I think I would put him top three just because of how brilliant he's performed. Certainly the games that I've watched.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, what about young player of the season? I'm going to spring that on you because we haven't spoken about that at all. But
so before I say my answer is young players 23 and under.
20. Yeah. Double points if you do want 21 and under. Yeah, 23 and under. Yeah.
I mean, the obvious answer is going to be Phil Foden, isn't it? But I'm going to go with Mason Mount.
I think it's a good shout.
I've watched him a lot this season. I just think he is a brilliant midfielder. Like, obviously, the argument for Foden is obvious because he has been, he's won a title with City. I think he's one of their top goal scorers. I just think he has been brilliant. But every time I watch Mount, he's definitely proved me wrong. I didn't think he was going to be good enough. But he has proved me wrong. I just think he's up there with arguably the best midfielders in the league. And if he isn't, a shoe-in for the England squad, then, I don't know who is. What do you think of Mount?
I'd agree with that. I thought he'd be good, but I didn't expect him to hit these levels this soon. And similar to Kane, he's just been so influential to that Chelsea team in every department, defensively, creatively, and also goal scoring. He's really improved as well. I think in every department he's been so important to Chelsea, and I didn't expect him to have that sort of influence this early in his career for such a big club. So I think Mount's a great suggestion. I think Foden's a great suggestion. And just to be annoying, I think my young player of the season would probably be Diaz, because then Kane can get the main one and he can get the young.
That's a good shout. That's a good shout,
isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So that's a great solution. If everyone wants Diaz to win something, give one to him, and then Kane have all the glory.
Who would be your manager of the season?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, looking at the table, Leeds in 9th, Bielsa is a shout.
Definitely.
For a promoted team to do that well, top half finish straight away, 2 points behind Arsenal, 3 points behind Spurs. Bielsa is a candidate for me. And then we move up the table up to 6th place, where West Ham sit. And David Moyes, who, again, pretty much a similar squad to that of last season. Couple of key additions, I think, in Souček and Soufal, actually. 2 players that have just taken us to the next level.
And Jesse Lingard. Don't forget Jesse Lingard.
No, of course. No. In all seriousness, that is fantastic loan signing. Maybe the best loan signing I've seen for quite a while. His instant impact was unbelievable. And actually, they've been quite fun. I'm not a big fan of West Ham. They are a rival of Spurs. It's not a very nice rival either. And but they have been good fun to watch this season. Really, quite a likeable team. And I think Moyes is a very likeable manager. And I think the majority of their success, yes, a few good signings, but most of it is on Moyes. For West Ham to finish 6th place on 66 points, 2 points below Chelsea in 4th. 2 points below Chelsea. I think it's extraordinary. I think David Moyes would be my manager of the season. Just given the context, yes, Guardiola has won his third title, I think, at City, is it?
Yeah.
And he's maybe revolutionised the game again, having no striker. And then obviously incredible, such a gulf above everyone else. But I think, given the context, given the resources, given the state of things before, where last season they just avoided relegation, when Moyes came in halfway through the season last season, avoided relegation. I think to then finish 6th is just extraordinary. I think David Moyes would be my manager of the season. How about you?
I think I will agree, because I was going to say Pep Guardiola just because of obviously circumstances last season, being so far off the league title and then coming in and then winning it comfortably again. I just think, he is the best manager in the world. In my mind, there's no question about that. But I'm going to give it to David Moyes, because from where they were to where he's taken them, it's pretty much just Everton Mark II, really. When he was at Everton, they were always constantly in the top 6 or top 8. And I think if he can do that again with West Ham, then why not? Give him manager of the season.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think their accomplishment deserves credit, and that credit is being voted manager of the season by Shaun and Ollie.
Yeah. Who would you say is signing of the season? Last one, and then we'll move on to
the season. Probably Diaz, but we've already spoken about Diaz. So to offer something different, I'm going to go closer to home, and I'm going to say Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who has not got the recognition he deserves this season. People talk about the best DMs in the league. He's never in the conversation. I don't understand why. He's trailed off this season. He has trailed off the second half a bit. Not as consistent, at least, maybe. But his numbers are unbelievable this season. I think he just has to be in the conversation. Yeah, so I look at his numbers here. And I really do believe he's been one of the best DMs in the league this season. To be honest, I'd say the best, but I won't say the best because otherwise I'll get loads of stick. And I just can't be bothered with that. He's been one of the best this season. I don't think there's any debate about that. And I'm amazed he's not in more conversations for team of the season conversations, because he's just been, for Spurs, he's almost been transformative. He's been such a leader. He's been so consistent, especially in the first half of the season. Like I say, slightly trailed off, but I think that's down to fatigue more than anything. He's played every single minute for Spurs this season in the Premier League, and also most in Europe as well, most cup competitions as well. But in the league, he's the only outfield player, I believe, or one of a handful to have played every single minute of Premier League football this season, which is extraordinary. I think he's the only outfield one, and he's made the most tackles. I'm using FB Ref, by the way.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that website.
Right, it's like before people can't be saying, "Oh, on the Premier League website it says this," or on Sofa Score. I've used FB Ref, and like Shaun said, it's a great website. Most tackles, 118, and also most tackles won. He is 5th for most tackles in the defensive third, and the other 3 of the other 4 above them are all defenders. He's 3rd for most midfield tackles. He is top for number of dribbles tackled. He's top for pressures, successful pressures. It's just extraordinary. Top for defensive third pressures, midfield third pressures.
I didn't think he'd been that good.
You get the idea. I mean, obviously, you'd expect him to be top of the midfield third defense, so he's top of pressures. But yeah, the headline is top pressures and top for tackles, and maybe and most minutes played for an outfield player. He's just been so reliable. It's extraordinary. And for me, he's the signing of the season. And you look back, it feels like he's been at Spurs for forever, which I think is a great sign of a good signing. It feels like he's been for Spurs for seasons and for years and years. And you look back to last season, I think, how the hell did we cope? It's crazy in comparison. Last season, we basically didn't have a CDM. We had Sissoko and Winks as like the sort of CDM, and that's just not good enough. And Højbjerg, he's just risen. It's been amazing for Spurs, and it's for value for money as well. It's like 10 million plus Walker Peters. It's about 15 million, I think it was. Sorry, 3 million plus Walker Peters. It's about 15 million.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. We've got something. It's one of our best signings in recent years for sure, in terms of instant impact, at least. And for that money as well, I think it's been fantastic for Spurs, and he's just put up such good numbers, and I'm so pleased we got him. I really am.
I'm going to go for a bit of a one outside of the box. Well, he plays in the box, but he's outside of the box. I'm going to go with Emi Martinez from Aston Villa. I think he was the cup goalkeeper for Arsenal last season, if I'm not mistaken, and he played in the FA Cup final. I just think for what he's done, because early on in the season, again, Villa were similar to Everton, where they started so well. Like, I think obviously Grealish had played a big impact, played a big part on that. But I do think that Emi Martinez was, if we had to name a team of the season, I think he would go in. He would be my goalkeeper. I just can't think of anyone who's been better. But no, I think for the fee they got him for, and I just think Arsenal were really crazy to just let him leave, considering they've got Leno, and I don't know about you, but I personally don't rate Leno that highly anyway. I think he's a good goalkeeper. I just don't know whether he's good.
Moments.
Yeah.
I do think, we'll go back to you talk about Martinez in a minute, but I do think from Arsenal's point of view, it's a difficult one because they can't keep both of them. I just don't think you can keep two goalkeepers who are a similar ability. You can't keep both of them. It doesn't make any sense because one of them's not going to play. One of them can play, if they're lucky, a quarter of the amount of matches the other one is. So they had to sell one of them, and if they sold Leno after one season, maybe 2 seasons, I think that would have looked. I think that would have looked a lot weirder than selling Martinez. So I totally get why they sold him. I get people. People say a lot. Arsenal mad to sell him. I still think they had to. They had to sell one of them, and it would have been crazy if they sold Leno at that moment. But in hindsight, right, Villa, fantastic signing from them. Just to snatch him up at 20 million is brilliant bit of recruitment, brilliant bit of business. Just to go for it, he's just strengthened the side massively, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think because Villa were safe for a while now, I think, from relegation. I think he's probably one of the biggest reasons why. Obviously, Grealish and McGinn and all that, but I just think he's been very underrated, and I just think he's been the goalkeeper of the season. That's why I'm going to go for him, because it's outside of the box, and it's not Ruben Diaz.
Yeah, I think Martinez's got the best save percentage, I think, this season.
Yeah, I think he does, yeah.
He's leading to something like that. He's been amazing.
Let's talk about the European Cup final between Chelsea and Manchester City. Manchester City had a very difficult run-in with PSG, Mönchengladbach, and Dortmund. I have to think about that for a second. Dortmund. What do you make of City's run to the final? Do you think they've deserved to be where they are?
I think they've been emphatic and really impressive in all their games, really. Actually, if anything, Dortmund was maybe the slight scare out of all of them. We talked about fine margins earlier in the podcast, and things could have been different if the referee didn't disallow that Bellingham goal, which is mental. Bellingham, another one who's just been fantastic this season. I'm really looking forward to summer. I think City, in pretty much all of their games in the group as well, I think they had Marseille amongst other people. Actually, that was when Stones started playing consistently for them. I think City have been really emphatic. PSG fell apart in the semi-finals, which was a shame. I've sort of over the last year or over the last sort of 6 months got slightly fond of PSG with Pochettino going there.
Okay.
That's the only reason, really. Just I want to see him do well. So I was a little bit disappointed because PSG just imploded completely. It was been embarrassing, but City capitalised and were, especially second leg, were just so dominant, so impressive. Everything went right for them, really, but they were helped massively by PSG just losing their heads. And then against Dortmund, it was on aggregate, I think it was 4-2 on aggregate. So both legs were fairly tight, I think, but City stood enough. And then against Gladbach, they just pushed them aside with ease, really. So it hasn't been the easiest run for them, but I think they've looked good value for their money, and massively deserving of their first ever Champions League final, which I think could be interesting in this conversation.
Definitely.
But I think I've been really impressed with City. I've been impressed how they've managed the squad, actually. Obviously walking the Premier League in the end, and whilst also not walking the Champions League, but looking pretty comfortable for the most part. I think they managed the squad brilliantly in this season, which has maybe been one of the biggest ticks for Guardiola this season. Been fortunate with injuries, I'd say, but even so. And again, that's credit to their recruitment and the money they invested in their squad depth is insane, and which played a big part. And I think it's really exciting to have an all English final, and I think both teams are deserving of being there. And City have looked, like I said, looked emphatic.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned about the PSG game. I'm just going to bring this up, but I feel like that the semi-final, I feel like it was done after the first leg because City won the game 2-1 away first leg.
2-1 away, the first one, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a player got sent off. I think it was Idrissa Gueye that got sent off, and I knew from there it just seemed inevitable really. And then obviously PSG players imploded. I mean, God knows why, but it seems to be just I know they got to the final last year, PSG, but over the last few years, it just seems they just can't quite make the next step to winning a big trophy. Obviously, not the French league, but the European Cup really. That's the next step. But Chelsea have had a difficult run in. Atletico Madrid, Porto, and Real Madrid. If you're talking about the game itself, how do you think it's going to go? How do you think it's going to play out?
I'm excited for it. I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be a good game. And I think what's interesting is seeing how, because we've seen them play each other twice in recent weeks, or certainly in the last sort of couple of months. Or was it in the league? Oh, FA Cup semi-final, wasn't it?
Yeah, Chelsea won both games.
Oh, yeah, Chelsea won both. Yeah, FA Cup final win, and also in the league, I think. Which is interesting, and I think mentally psychologically it's going to play a big part in the final. I think both sides will score, and I think it's a question. I think Chelsea had the experience of being there before, obviously with a totally different team. So I don't know how much part. I don't know how big that plays. But City probably had the edge on quality.
No.
I think it's a case of who can keep the heads more. I think City better form maybe. I think losing on the last day against Villa could really genuinely impact the final. Chelsea. It's very different. I think it's very different having to go into a final where you've just lost and having to pick yourself up again, knowing that you lost against Aston Villa with respect to them. I think they've had a great side. So then having to think, oh my God, we're now going to play City, who have just walked the league and they're probably the best team in the world. Knowing that, and from City just beat Everton 5-0. Now going into it thinking, yeah, we can do this. I think that confidence that City have from having such a good season and also consistency with the manager, the system. I think City might edge it.
I think it's so difficult to call because obviously it's a one-off game. You can never really predict. But I just think, I know Chelsea have beat them twice recently, as you say, in the FA Cup and the league. I just can't see anything else other than a City win. I think they're just going to beat them comfortably because, I'm going to go with 3-1 because I just feel like I think Chelsea will start well, but I just feel like City's, as you mentioned, City's quality. I feel like that'll just take them over the edge, and then they'll just win comfortably 3-1. Guardiola's obviously got experience of European Cup finals. I feel like we should mention.
But saying that, so is Tuchel, having lost the last final last year.
Very true. So I think, as you say, it's more about mentality really, because as you say, Chelsea lost to Villa and then City won 5-0. Is it going to be a question of, is it going to be weighing on them heavy? The fact that they've lost their last game.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think what's interesting is when Chelsea beat them the last two times, it hasn't been luck. I think Tuchel sort of knows how Guardiola works. I think that's a really interesting tactical battle. I think Tuchel sort of has half got him worked out. So it's a big test of Guardiola. I think actually this. I think the pressure's on City.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd agree completely.
Guardiola's got a history of sort of trying too much in these knockout games. Sort of trying to be a bit too niche, a bit too experimental. And I fear that's the one sort of doubt I have, that he might, having lost in the last two meetings against Tuchel, Chelsea. That's my one fear, that you might try too much to change how he plays. And actually, I think he's got a better chance if he sticks to what he knows best. Stick to what's won them the league comfortably. And I mentioned the experience Chelsea have of winning the Champions League, but that was about 10 years ago with an entirely different team. Do you think that plays a part at all?
I think it does, because Petr Cech's still there, and obviously he was there in the final. I think maybe that could help, but I do get what you mean. Chelsea have been there before, but I think it's all just a mentality thing. As you mentioned about Guardiola changing, tactics in big European games, he's got to just stick to what he's best at. You can't go changing it in the European final because you only get one shot at it. You can't change it, experiment it, because you've only got one game. Yeah. So I just think he's just got to stick with what he knows best.
Okay, so moving on then, we'll sort of slightly bring things forward from Sunday and look at Wednesday night, the Europa League final between Unai Emery's Villarreal, underdogs, I think they for sure.
Definitely underdogs. Yeah.
Against your beloved Manchester United. The floor is yours. What's your predictions? How do you see it?
I mean, Villarreal have had two very good results. Well, they beat Sevilla 4-0, but they did lose to Real Madrid, but they did play really well. I think it will be a lot tougher than people are making out. I think I watched them against Arsenal. I thought defensively they were superb. I think the loss of Maguire. I know people slate him for the price and stuff, but I do think the loss of him for the final, unless he makes a miraculous recovery, I think it is crucial because he is our best defender. I mean, it's no secret that he is our best defender. In terms of what actually will happen with the game, I think it's so difficult to call because it's Solskjaer's first final. I mean, it can be his first trophy. It'd be hard for me as a fan. It would be gutting if we lost in the final because there was this semi-final hoodoo where I think we got to 4 semi-finals and we lost them all. It would just be gutting if we actually got to a final and then lost it. So part of me thinks we'll win comfortably, but then also part of me thinks we're going to struggle, which obviously is very sitting on the fence. But I think we will win. But I don't know. I mean, Villarreal have a few very dangerous players. I think, is it Chukwueze, the Nigerian winger?
Chukwueze, yeah, he's a really exciting player.
He was supposed to be injured for the final, but apparently he's back in training now. They've got Pau Torres, the defender from Villarreal, who I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
They've got Parejo from Valencia. Yeah, Torres is linked with us as well. So I think that's his big audition. Parejo, who's brought in from Valencia for something ridiculous like 5 million.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's not going to be an easy game, but I'm confident. Sorry?
Juan Foyth, out on loan from Spurs.
Oh, Juan Foyth, yeah. Francis Coquelin, he's a Villarreal.
All jokes aside, has had a good season and it looks decent. And actually, the main man I know for Villarreal is Gerard Moreno.
Yes.
Who is now sort of Spain's starting striker as well, and he's had a great season. I think he's the competition top goal scorer. I think he's the top goal scorer in Europa League. He's one to look out for.
I think we will win. It's just a question about, because obviously the players have lost so many semi-finals. It's just going to be, we've reached the final. Are we going to lose it again? It would be heart-wrenching, and I'm just thinking about it now. I'm just not prepared for that eventuality.
So here's a question then. So obviously, was it 2017? Was 2016?
When we won, it was 2017.
Yeah. With Mourinho when you won. Does that play a part? Does that give you extra confidence?
Slightly, because I can see the similarities. Because Ajax, I feel like Villarreal are kind of like that. Not in terms of play style, but just in terms of the actual, the history of the club and stuff. And it's just like, if we won that game comfortably, and I just feel like it could be like that, where we build it up so much, but yet Villarreal are just no match for a Premier League side. Because I do feel like the gap in quality between the Premier League and the Serie A and the Spanish League is sort of, the Premier League's up here, and I just feel like the rest of the leagues are sort of down here. No disrespect, this is where I get egg on my face now, and Villarreal play us off the park. But I just feel like the quality has increased.
You say that. Well, they did a job over Arsenal in the semi-finals.
Oh yeah, they did a really good job on Arsenal.
Unai Emery is known for this competition. This is his favourite thing.
Yeah, it's bread and butter, really.
Exactly. And you won't want to hear this. I think Villarreal might win the final.
I know. I
think they might do it. I could genuinely see a 2-1 Villarreal win, and that is my prediction. You won't want to hear that, but that's my prediction. I just think Emery's, like you say, it's his first final, Ollie's first final, and I think that plays a big part. I think an experience might really come to fruition here and be there for all to see in the harsh light of day. And I think Emery, I just think his experience just might edge you over the line. And like you say, Maguire's absence, if he is out for the final, which it looks likely, I didn't think about that actually, but that's a big loss. It's a big loss. And was it against, who was your last opponent?
We played Wolves on Sunday, and it was Fulham.
I watched the game before that, and the the centre backs just looked all over the place. Without Maguire, looked so lost.
Yeah. I mean, against Liverpool, we were just outplayed. But I mean, Liverpool's front three against our defence was just...
step up. But I do think the likes of Moreno and Chukwueze and could just without Maguire there, they could just exploit the centre backs and pull them out of position. And I don't know. I could just see Emery's experience coming out trumps.
Yeah, and just quickly on Moreno himself. I mean, obviously you say he's tall and physical, which immediately makes me worried because of the defenders we have. I mean, we don't have Maguire. I mean, Maguire is very good against physical strikers, and if it's Lindelof and Bay, or if it's Lindelof and Twantibi, then I don't know. I just feel like we may struggle with him up front. And you mentioned about Emery. I didn't even think of that. He's the Europa League specialist, which is slightly worrying. But I'm going to go with a 2-1 win. I think we will win 2-1. Touch wood. We will win.
Yeah. By the way, Moreno's got 23 goals in 33 appearances.
I think it's sort of a cycle, really, just to finish it up. It's sort of a cycle of, because like before we had the Spanish sides who always were getting to Champions League finals, Europa League finals, Sevilla, namely. And now we're sort of at the cycle where it's English sides mostly that are getting to European finals. So thank you for tuning in for the first episode of the On The Volley podcast with me, Shaun Webley, and my friend
Ollie Spencer.
And join us next week where we'll be talking about, I think we should talk about the England squad. I think we'll go with England themed.
England themed, yeah, why not? It's a big talking point, isn't it?
Yeah, England themed. We'll review the Champions League and Europa League finals next week.
Yes.